Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Conversations with an Investor. Today we have Matt Gubba and we're going to cover off what happens when you go from a laid-back school to a draconian rule. And an impromptu car accident had set off a rebellious streak that Matt wasn't aware that he had within him. And that served him well, because when you take that rebellious streak and combine that with self-belief, it doesn't matter if you have any twists and turns where you're looking at rough areas in London and you can tell the difference between human and animal excrement and everything in between, that shouldn't stop you on your rise, because if you have a goal or a dream, don't let things get in your way. Self-belief will get you through. So without further ado, let's dive right in. So I was thinking about when you put a post up on your Twitter about, it was quite good. I remember looking at it and I thought, this is worth a chat. This is worth a conversation.
Yeah.
Before you got onto Twitter and invited people out, what happened before then?
So what, before I was on Twitter at all?
Yeah, like you put on Twitter that you were, sort of staying in a, crappy flat that was close to the railway.
Okay, yeah. I see.
How did you get to that point? What was going on?
So I've got an unusual story in a lot of ways, and that I was quite lucky growing up. I came from quite a decent background, and we weren't poor by any stretch of the imagination. I went to quite good schools and whatever, but I was always just very rebellious, and I never really wanted to do kind of what everyone else is doing, almost to the point where if someone said, "Oh, this is the kind of correct path you should go," I was like, "No, I'm not going to go that way. I'm going to go this way instead." So I always kind of wanted to have my own business ever since I was kind of in my teens, or maybe even younger than that, because I grew up with my dad having his own business and a few other people in my family having their own businesses. And I kind of had a little pop at it when I was in my teens. I had like a part-time thing. I set up this snowboarding website. I made a little bit of pocket money or whatever. It was never something particularly serious. But I kind of realized from that there was a lot I needed to learn to do something proper, as it were. So I kind of had in my head that I wanted to leave school as soon as I could, which I ended up doing at 16, and learning various things like finance, accountancy, as we're joking about, marketing, sales, all that kind of stuff. I learned web design, a bit of coding. And I spent a few years doing that, kind of jumping between different jobs. And I got to around about, I must have been mid-20s, 25, 26. And I've kind of just felt like, right, I'm ready now. And at that time, I was in a finance job. And I just, from the outside, I must have looked like an absolute maniac, because I was earning quite good money there. I didn't really have any kind of worries, whatever. And I just said, right, I'm going to leave and I'm going to start my own business. Don't know what it's going to be, but I'm going to leave. I'm going to start my own business. So I just canned this job. Didn't have any income, didn't have much, in terms of savings to fall back on, because I was young and I just used to spend all my money going out and partying, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So I did, and I just kind of winged it. I just kind of had this. I think, from the outside, I think people kind of look at people who do things like that and think, are you crazy? It's a huge risk, blah, blah, blah. But I don't think I ever saw it as a risk, because I kind of felt like I just had so much confidence in the fact that I could do it. Like, whether it was right or wrong, I guess, was still time to be proven either way, I suppose. But I just felt like I could pull it off. So for me, it didn't seem like a risk. And I spent, obviously, there's always going to be a bit of a transition. So for about a year after I left my job, I was kind of trying to find my feet with it. And it did get to the point where I was living in this flat. Basically very little money coming in, not enough money to pay the money that was going out. And it got to the point where I had at the time, don't judge me, but I had a kind of a Subaru Impreza, on the like rally ones, like all the kind of like bells and whistles on it. And at the time, it's really cool in mid-20s, isn't it? But
what year was it?
Now, kind of what year? It was the Blob Eye one. So what was it? It must have been 2005 or something like that. It's a blue one with all the STI logos on, all that kind of thing. Anyway, I loved it. Anyway, but it had there was like a Pro Drive package you could get on it. So it was, yes. Yeah. So I had one of those, and we got to the point where I didn't have enough money to basically live, effectively. So I had to sell it, and I sold that for eye-watering loss to get rid of it quickly to generate some cash, and was driving around in basically a Ford Fiesta that I bought for £100 from someone that was going to scrap it, and it had like plastic bumpers and a door that didn't open and stuff, just so I could get around and about if I needed to. that kind of kept me going for a couple more months. And it was at that point that I actually managed to pull it off, and I got our first. So this was with this Britain. I got our first kind of large contract. So I went from being on the edge of like, what am I going to do? I'm going to start eating out of bins, to suddenly earning more money than I'd ever earned before. So it was it was a gamble, but it kind of paid off. And then I was obviously able to claw back, what I'd lost over the year, and kind of keep going from there, and went from there and there. And now here we are today, I guess, with 30 odd people working for us. We've done close to 100 million in lending. So yes, it worked out, I think.
Well, I mean, I can't judge you for having a rally car because I had an Evo 6 Zero Fighter.
Oh, do you?
Yeah. I'll judge you because you picked the Subaru, not the Evo, because it's the softer one.
Yeah, well, my best friend's got an Evo 7. He just keeps it in his garage. He doesn't drive it that much. But
I drove it like I stole it. I didn't hang about.
Yeah, I think he does when he drives it, just rarely.
That was back in the days when you were like, what is the exhaust material and how much can I remap before I blow the turbo up? And
that was exactly it. Yeah.
The interior didn't matter. It was all plastic. It didn't matter. All you wanted to hear was a dump valve and a whoosh.
That was it. Yeah, the HKS one, I think it was.
Oh, you went all out HKS.
Yeah.
It was always the filters. You remember, like the honeycomb filter was the K&N filter everyone had.
That's it. Yeah.
That was the thing that was the thing to be involved in. So, like you said, you were rebellious. Like when you were young, like what was happening when you were young that showed off this rebellious streak? Give me an example.
So I suppose to kind of give some context, and I guess I've kind of unpicked this in my own mind a few times and worked out where it came from. And I think so when I was young, up until pre-12, I went to this quite unusual private school, and it was run by this strange American lady who she was a doctor of something, but she called herself Ophelia, from like the classics. Of course, she loved the classics, so everyone had to call her Ophelia. Mm-hmm. And all the teachers, you called them by their first names. And there was no school uniform. You kind of wore your own clothes, and there was lots of kind of people from quite arty backgrounds. There were a few kids of quite famous like 80s rock stars and that kind of stuff there. So it's a very unusual environment. And it was very relaxed, and you kind of got treated like a grown-up, as it were, as much as you can do as a child. And then from there, I kind of went to this kind of quite strict boys' old school kind of grammar school, where the headmaster and his kind of sidekicks wore like kind of cloaks, a bit like sort of Harry Potter, and like you see up on the stage, but sitting in these big chairs, and it was very, very strict. And to go from one environment to the other, it was a hell of a shock to the system, and I kind of I didn't really know what hit me, to be honest. And at first, I kind of like, you try to go along with it, don't you? And I remember in my first year there, I was late one day, and I was panicking so much to get to school on time because I didn't want to get shouted at by these really strict teachers. I actually ended up getting hit by a car on my way to school. But it wasn't just like a brush. It was quite bad. I got, I was knocked unconscious and cracked my neck and broke one of my legs and had to go in an ambulance and all that. And I remember just kind of getting to the hospital and being on my own. I was like 12 years old and being this, like lying in a hospital on like strapped to a stretcher with like the sandbags like tied to your head and stuff, like just been left there waiting for someone to come and see me. I remember just having this like realization of like, what on earth did why were you so worried about getting shouted at? Some just old guy shouting at you that you've literally just nearly died. I think it was a kind of almost like a turning point for me there when I unpick it. And ever since then, I went the other way. I just refused to kind of comply with any kind of authority. And ended up getting myself in bother, a few times at school.
What age were you then?
Like, as I say, I ended up leaving when I was 16 because I just wanted to get out there and kind of do my own thing, really. So yeah, I think that's kind of where it started. And I think I remember the way I left is kind of a good example. In that at the time, I got my first part-time job when I was 14, and we worked. There was I don't know if you know what dry ski slopes are.
Yep.
So there was a dry ski slope about 20-minute walk from my school, and I actually had a part-time job there, where we'd worked in the boot room. We'd set up the skis and snowboards and stuff. People coming to use the slopes, and it meant I got free use of the slopes. So I was really into snowboarding. So it was kind of why I started. I kind of went to try and get a job there.
How did you get into snowboarding? Were you like a big fan of X Games or?
No, to be honest, my best mate tried it when we were sort of 13, 14. He said, "Do you want to come up and give it a go?" Dry ski slope, and I did, and it kind of went from there, really. Yeah, so it's something I kind of got really big on in my teens, and went and got a job there. So then we could snowboard all the time for free. But yeah, and actually then I trained. I did a UK dry slope snowboard instructor qualification. So then by the time I was 16, I was able to do that, and that's so that kind of coincided when I was able to leave school. So there was a period of time when I started sixth form that I was getting the bus to the school with my school uniform, but I had because I was able to use the staff room at the ski slope, all my stuff, my snowboard stuff, whatever, was in the staff room there. And I'd have a change of clothes in my backpack instead of my books. And I'd get the bus to school and walk to the ski slope and go and teach kind of the snowboarding day classes where you get the colleges and stuff. They'd bust them in, and I'd be teaching the lessons there instead of going to school. And that lasted about a month until I got caught.
You were rumbled.
And then, I got caught. I got rumbled by my parents, and then I think one of my friends phoned up who was also working there and asked where I was, and they said, "Oh, he's at school." My mum said, "Oh, he's at school." And, he said, "No, he's supposed to be meeting me in half an hour at work." I said, "Is he?" So that was yeah.
So you would have went. What age were you that you went to the relaxed sort of American? What's her name?
So that was from after nursery up until 12, when I did 12 plus.
So 5 until you were 12?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Right. Jeez, this really relaxed atmosphere, and then you went into draconian sort of tyrant mode.
It was opposite ends of the spectrum, so it kind of really and
then you end up getting hit by so did you have any rebellious streaks before getting hit with the car?
I don't know, really. I mean, I was always quite a solitary person in the sense. I was always quite happy just to be by myself and do my own thing and kind of just do whatever. I don't specifically remember. I guess it's difficult as well because it's so young back then. But I think it's probably something that's always been in my personality. I think that just really brought it out. I remember there being a marked change after that.
I mean, you can maybe gather you're a man after my own heart here. In terms of you're talking my language in terms of the rebellious streak.
Yeah.
I'm your greatest asset if you can explain to me why you want me to do something and that there's some benefit. But I'm your worst nightmare if you just expect to ask me something and that I'll do it without question if it makes no sense.
Yeah. That's it.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah, absolutely. I need to know why I'm doing something. I won't just follow a rule because it's because it's there. I need to understand. Well, why is the rule there? How's it benefiting me? What's it doing? What's it? Yeah.
It's funny you say that. I was thinking about this, and tell me what you think of this. I was thinking about this when I was coming over to the studio, and there's a ridiculous rule, and amongst lots of ridiculous rules that we see today that are just sort of suggested that we should all follow them. And over the past few years, there's been many instances of these rules just being pen stroked in. There's a particular one in Scotland at the moment that's a hot topic. And it made me think of that expression that you heard years ago when someone says, these rules look to me like if they jumped off a bridge, would you do it? And the rules look the same as that.
Yeah.
That, if someone wrote the rule, just jump off the bridge, would you do it just because the rule's been written? Surely we should ask why.
Yeah.
And I guess it's those rebellious sort of natured souls like ourselves that are the ones that tend to rear up and say, hey, look, I don't understand this.
Yeah. It's kind of like, it kind of came to kind of head in a kind of real world environment, I guess, didn't it? A few years ago when all the kind of lockdowns and stuff came in, and it kind of people like us emerged who were like, hang on a minute, what are we doing this for? I don't agree with this.
It was even craziness. I mean, that's the thing, and it's we I don't know if you were the same, but we were the bad guys. We were you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. As well, explain it to me, because when you explain it, it doesn't make sense. Yeah,
exactly. Because that's even worse, isn't it? Than having no explanation. It's having an explanation that's just it makes no sense. It's just ridiculous, and everyone can kind of see it's ridiculous if you pick it apart. But
yeah, it's difficult. But I mean, going back to your childhood, I mean, I take it did your parents recognise any of the rebellious streak in you up until the point where you decided to, say, look, Lord Voldemort is no longer getting my punctuality because I headered a car on the way to school?
Do you know what? I don't know. Probably. I think they kind of probably recognise that in us when we, and me when I was young, and it probably partly informed the school choice, maybe. Going to a school like that because I was a little bit rebellious, a little bit different. But who
And
knows?
did they know? Did they know the difference between the two schools? Because it seems like two extremes.
Yeah, we did. But I mean, I guess I think my dad went to quite a similar grammar school up in Manchester when he was a kid. A very similar type of school. He was just that way. I guess I don't know. I don't know whether they just didn't see it as a problem or thought, oh, he'll get on with it or what. But it was just what the choice was. I guess they just wanted me to go to the best option. For secondary school, where to get the best exams or whatever. I don't know. But that was the best place to go around where I lived.
So when you were going through school and you went to the snowboarding, the dry slopes, and you had this great aspiration of becoming a snowboard instructor, what was Matt then thinking his future would be? Were you going to be riding off mountains, jumping out of helicopters down,
I think the great James Bond. I think the great aspiration was to kind of, I think when you're into a sport, when you're that age, it's the aspiration to become a professional, isn't it? Be like one of the people that competes, like you said, like the X Games and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of like a bit of a pipe dream for like 99.9% of people, isn't it?
Who was the dude then? Who was the guy then that you were? Who was it? Bob Burnquist. I'm trying to remember the guys.
He was a skateboarder, wasn't he? There was that kind of era. There was like the Tony Hawk kind of era when I was late 90s, early 2000s when I was kind of in my teens. So yeah, there's I don't know if have you ever been you snowboard, don't you?
Yeah, snowboard. And I watched the X Games. I remember staying up late to watch the X Games. And being fascinated, and they had the X Games and they had the Winter X Games. So you had the Summer X Games, which was the BMX stunts. I think they had inline skates at the time, so rollerblades. What else did they have? Like they had all the sort of extreme sports, but it was on in UK television. It was on late at night, so you had to be up at 3 or 4 in the morning to watch it. But they had the summer edition was the summer sports, and they had the winter edition. And the winter edition caught me even more than the summer ones, because as growing up, I liked to do, I had a bike and I had a BMX and had roller skates. So I was like, oh, this looks really cool. These guys are pulling wicked tricks. I made a local skate park. So it was just fascinating to see what they could do. But then you see the Winter X Games, and this is something that's tangible because you can see the tricks, but it's in this environment. You go, wow.
Yeah.
And they were taking even more risks, because when you hit concrete, you tend to hold back because it's going to hurt. Where the snow, the perception is that you land. Anyone that's landed in snow realizes that it's not any softer than concrete. You're just going to bounce the same as you would. But you've seen the Winter X Games; they were fascinating.
It is, yeah. It's amazing, isn't it? And they make it look so easy. That's the thing, isn't it? They make it look so effortless when they do these incredible tricks. They go off jump the size of a house and do like 3 backflips and whatever, and they just that's it. I'm just going along.
They were so cool. They were like too cool for school. That's sort of similar to your own life, where you're like, I think I'll go and pursue this. But they just had that kind of nonchalant way about them, where it was like, everything's easy. Just pull up this. Just do a 1440 with a backflip and a twist. That's it. It's easy.
Yeah, exactly. But then I guess you get a bit older, don't you? And I kind of got to late teens and thought, do you know what? Actually, I've got a bit more aspiration in this. I don't think working for £10 an hour as a snowboard instructor at the local ski slope is going to kind of satisfy me much longer.
No, I wasn't going to cut it.
Yeah,
I'm not going to get a Subaru on that money.
Yeah, time to move on, kind of thing. So then I kind of it wasn't that I wanted to do. Obviously with anything like that, you kind of see it as something you do when you're young. I think you're kind of a bit more reckless then, aren't you? I know I certainly was. I thought, I'll do this for a few years and I'll do that. And you have this plan in your head, don't you? I'll be a snowboarder till I'm in my 20s, and I'll kind of go and just start something or do something.
Well, what was the plan like? Do you remember what it was?
It was very much loosely like that, really. Because I wanted to do snowboarding as long as I could, and then go and start a business and learn how to start a business kind of as I was going. And I was quite lucky in a respect. So I kind of started that journey of like learning what I wanted to do when I was probably around about 17, 18. My dad had, like I said, he had his own company. So I went and worked for him for a while, just doing kind of learning about like various bits and pieces like sales and marketing, that kind of thing.
Was he a good help in terms of did you go to him as a sort of?
Yeah, I learned about being in a real business and what it what it was actually, the reality it was was actually like. It helped. Yeah, it did help, and I was able to learn some good stuff that I probably wouldn't be able to learn at that age. See parts of the business I wouldn't be able to see if I wasn't the owner's son. So that was quite lucky. I had it kind of gave me a bit of an insight into kind of what lay ahead. I didn't do that for that long, maybe like a year or so. And then I went off and kind of started trying various other jobs, accountancy jobs, sales and marketing things. Accountancy is something that I kind of really focused on, not practice and tax accountancy, but working within companies in like the finance team, because I kind of felt like it was something you needed to. I don't know why I had this perception. I felt like it's something you needed to understand to be able to kind of be big in business or whatever. That's just what I believed at that time, even though it's not necessarily true.
How long in the accountancy roles did you feel? How long did it take before when you started to when you realised that the small part of you was dying slowly?
So I was doing that for about 3.5 years, maybe. And then, I was like, no more. And I understand. I got to the point where I started it's a funny story, really. I went in there because I was doing in my spare time, I was doing like the accountancy qualification just so I could basically get a job, because I left school at 16. I didn't have any A-levels or degree or whatever. So I kind of had that hurdle to jump over, that kind of glass ceiling, because most people don't take you seriously unless you've got the piece of paper. So I thought, I'll start doing this as a foot in the door. So I say, look, I'm learning this. Give me a job alongside it. Mm-hmm. So I managed to get a temping job. I was a 2-week temp contract through an agency working in the finance department in this consumer electronics company. And I thought, right, I'm going to go in there. I'm going to smash it for a couple of weeks and see where it goes. So I did that and smashed it for a couple of weeks, and they absolutely loved me. And so basically, I don't know about how legal it was, but they made the kind of youngish accounting guy that worked there, redundant, and gave me a very similar job to what his was. So then I ended up working there for 3.5, 4 years. And in that time went from being a kind of junior guy to the guy in charge of the whole department. And then I kind of felt like, well, I kind of done what I'm going to do here. I don't want, the thought of being here in another 20 years makes me want to throw myself off a building. So I'll go and try something else now. And that's when I took the real plunge. I thought, right, I'm going to go all in on myself now. I'm just going to go, shit or bust effectively, and just try and do something of my own.
How did you get to the point where you were at, working in a, accounting sector in a business to jumping to Biz Britain? I mean, that's a fairly
it's a bit
big leap.
Yeah.
How does that come about?
A strange convoluted story. I mean, so like I said, when I first left, I just knew I wanted to start a business. I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do or where it was going to go. So when I first left and started, I was basically just doing freelance, like accountancy type stuff. So approaching small business owners and saying, look, I'll do all your account stuff for X amount a month, trying to undercut like the kind of more expensive, bigger companies. Did that for a little while, got a few clients. And then I started going to networking events in London with the intention of trying to kind of broaden that. And what I quickly realized was that all the guys running these networking events were massively well connected. They kind of seemed to know everyone. It created loads of opportunity. I thought, well, why don't I give that a pop? I'll run some events and see how that works rather than just going to the events. So I basically, I just thought, right, yeah, I'll do it. So I hired this private club in London called Adam Street. It was actually, it doesn't exist anymore. It was near the Strand. It's quite cool, kind of underground. It was like an entrepreneurs club. So I hired a room there, just got on LinkedIn. I made like a little logo and a flyer, went on LinkedIn and literally just searched for people around the London area that were interested in startups and entrepreneurship and running their own small business. I just sat on LinkedIn for hours a day, just inviting people to these events. I managed to, so I think the capacity was like 100 or 150 people. So I managed to, I was selling tickets for not very much money, 20 quid or something. I managed to get 150 people signed up for the first one. I thought, right, what am I going to do now? I'm going to have to set up like some catering, get myself like a speaker and a microphone and think of something to say.
What age are you at this point?
Huh?
What age are you at this point?
Mid 20s, maybe like 25.
I mean, that's impressive that you've sort of put that together and thought, hey, look, I'm going to give this a go. I mean, you look back to, if you look from the lens of today with, I'm struggling with imposter syndrome and all that shit, and you go, you've got right, I want to be on Winter X Games. I've went into accounting. I've realised that I can't imagine what it was like in the accounting department where you show up and be like, what do you used to do? Well, I went to this school, got ran over, done snowboarding, blagged the temporary job, sort of worked my way up. It must have been like, who's this enigma? And then you go and think, well, let me go and hook up, let me hire a club and go and see if I can sell some tickets.
Yeah. Blag my way into public speaking. Yeah, that's the other thing as well. I had no experience of public speaking. It's like absolutely terrified me, to be honest.
What did you talk about?
Just kind of did like an intro and welcome to the event and kind of a bit of background about what I was trying to do and build up these events, and that was it really. It was pretty dire looking back. I should have filmed it really. But
do you remember it? Do you remember it being dire?
No, I mean, I think I remember being so nervous, you kind of just do it, and then you kind of look back and think, oh, I've done it, I'm still alive.
Just the relief that it's out the way.
That's it, isn't it? Yeah. But actually, it gets easier. It's one of those things, isn't it? You do it a few times and it becomes quite easy. But, yeah.
I remember doing something a few years back, and they'd asked the same sort of situation. They were like, how long have you done public speaking for? I'm like, I haven't spoken in front of anyone since I was in school.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was that same sort of thing of just relief that it was done. And I'm just lucky, very, very lucky that, I'm not sure if they were being nice to me, or I might have sort of knocked out of the park by complete and utter fluke. But
I'm sure you knocked it out of the park. You've got the right voice for it. You're like a kind of muscly Sean Connery, aren't you? You've got really smooth kind of.
Well, thank you. We need to smooth it out because we speak so quickly here that they don't understand us if we don't slow it down.
Yeah, you got the voice for radio, definitely. But that was kind of how it started, really. And then
what was the response then? Like, so you've got these entrepreneurs in, they don't know you. You've gathered them together. You've went on LinkedIn. You've blagged some sales, which is great.
It went quite well, to be honest. I think the thing is with stuff like that, if you get a decent selection of guests, because it's a networking thing, everyone's just walking around having a drink and chatting to each other. And as long as you get a good mix of people that get on, I think it kind of does the work for you, really, because people enjoy it as much as the conversations they have. It's something like that. And if it's in a nice surrounding, which it was a really cool place, decent drinks and all that kind of thing in a good area, people seem to enjoy it, and I kept putting them on every month, and I actually managed to get a sponsor for the event, which allowed me to kind of be under less pressure with just only having money from ticket sales. So they sticking a few £1,000 an event each month for me to put all their banners and the stuff up everywhere. I did that for a while, and then that kind of evolved into I don't really want to do the accounting stuff, to be honest. I want to kind of do more of this kind of thing and help, because the kind of way I saw it is I was helping people kind of grow their business and get started, because we were helping people network and make connections. And I always had this kind of bugbear that because I hadn't been to university or whatever, I think I found when I was looking for jobs, there was always a bit of a glass ceiling where people, didn't matter how good you were or what, when you're young, because you don't have much experience, people just weren't interested in letting you in the door to speak to you unless you had the piece of paper that said you had a degree. So I thought, well, why don't I create something similar to this, like an online kind of based network and resource website with lots of resources on, designed to help young people, kind of late teens, early 20s, who hadn't been to university, to start up their own business. So I kind of created the web. This was Biz Britain, effectively, when it started out. So very different to what it is today. So I created a website, and at first, effectively, all I was doing was going around and interviewing famous entrepreneurs who hadn't been to uni. So trying to well-known people that had good stories, and I'd go along with my camera and I'd set it all up, and I'd sit there and I'd interview them and ask them to tell their story, and we'd put it on the website, and start building up a social media following, showing the content. How did you find out that they were uniless, or what would be the
expression you would use if they didn't have the?
Oh, so the kind of slogan for for Biz Britain at the time was "Success doesn't require a degree," and that was kind
Nice.
of yeah.
That
So
the strapline.
yeah. So that's kind of like the whole thing. I'd go around. I was doing speaking events, and I did some stuff with the Peter Jones Enterprise Academy where we did like a little mini Dragon's Den style thing for their students. And we had a panel with me and a couple of the people. They'd have like groups of the kids, come along, they'd pitch their business ideas to us and do a few things like that, like good publicity. And then around about 6 months after we'd started, the government came up with the idea for this. They were very big on pushing startups at the time. They basically came up with this idea, or Lord Young came up with the idea of the startup loan scheme. I don't know if you're familiar with it, which was originally designed to target exactly the demographic we were going at, which was 18 to 24-year-olds who wanted to start a business. And it was a scheme to kind of give them a subsidised loan, so a bit like a student loan, really, because it was around about the time, it was 2012, remember, so you just had all the student riots and everyone kicking off because all the, they were in England anyway, the tuition fees had just gone from 0 to 10 grand a year or whatever. So they were trying to pacify people and create some kind of alternative thing for other young people to do. So it kind of, I saw that and I thought, this looks absolutely ideal. So let's see if we can get involved with this. And again, weird kind of serendipitous situation in that one of the people I'd met through running the networking events knew someone that was very influential within the startup loan scheme. So originally, James Kahn, the guy of Dragon's Den, was the chairman, and the person I met was good friends with his daughter. So I ended up getting connected in with them through the events I was doing, and I managed to, long story short, turn it into a contract to be one of the first delivery partners for the government scheme. No experience in being a lender or anything like that. It's one of those things. It's who you know, isn't it? Sometimes.
Yeah. So what was your role to? They had a requirement of, we're looking for these types of people, and you were going to be the gatekeeper of, right? Can you distribute these?
Yeah.
They distribute these loans for you're going to check if they're the right fit for what we're looking for.
Exactly that. So they were speaking to a number of different organisations, so like youth organisations, the Prince's Trust were involved with it, people like that. And effectively, our role was we'd have this big contract to lend X amount of money, and our role was to receive the business plans and the cash flow forecasts and all that kind of stuff, and see if it all stacked up, and then we would effectively either approve or deny it. And actually, funnily enough, all the accounting stuff I did was absolutely perfect for that, because I was able to understand all the financial data and look at it and think, well, does this stack up? Does it not?
What's it like when you get that kind of volume of business plan from an 18-year-old? I can imagine the gap of what was considered a good business plan was fairly wide. Yeah,
it was. But I'd also say that back then it was kind of like the Wild West, because I mean, we're talking back before the FCA was kind of brought in as a kind of governing body to regulate consumer lending. Before 2000, maybe 2015, it wasn't really regulated. You could get a license from the Office of Fair Trading to be a lender you paid like £1,000, and it was like getting a TV license. They'd send you a certificate, and you could be a lender or a broker or whatever with commercial lending. So it was. I mean, that's why I had all the problems with Wonga and all those companies ripping people off. With 1,000% interest, and that's why that's why they created the FCA. So it was actually very easy to become, a commercial lender or commercial finance broker back then. So we were quite lucky with the timing as well, because we were able to get in the door before it all started becoming really heavily regulated. So there wasn't that massive bar to entry that there perhaps is now in that industry. But it was an experience, and there were some very unscrupulous other delivery partners on the scheme who ended up effectively, because there was no I suppose in the first year they were just interested in getting as much money out the door to as many young people as possible to kind of prove the concept. So there were I won't know who there were other organisations.
10 friends have all applied for a loan because they know the criteria, and we don't know where the money's went, but all the plans.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that. Yeah, it was it was even worse than that, to be honest. There were organisations that, especially youth organisations, that were getting, they get 100 kids into a room, like it was like timeshare. Think of timeshare salespeople. They just sell them the idea, say right, and they'd give out the contracts and get them to sign the contracts these 10 grand loans when they're in the room.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty shameful, but then obviously that ended up coming back on them quite badly because they obviously surprising 80+% of the kids could never pay the loans back, and this organisation got kicked out of the scheme. Obviously, it didn't end well for them. So, but yeah,
were they paid a percentage of what was the agreement? Were they given a percentage?
It was always fee per loan.
Right.
The whole scheme's fee per loan.
So their drive is how many, solve numbers.
So they're trying to get as many as they could. Yeah. So now obviously it's a lot more regulated now. You've got the FCA. It's all a big organisation now compared to what it was, all that kind of startup loan stuff. It's all governed by the British Business Bank now. It's all very regulated and done proper and above board. And it's actually in some ways probably harder to get one of those now than it is to get a bank loan because it's been opened up to everyone. It's not just kids. It's kind of a generic scheme now. So, but it's still at the core of what we do. We still work heavily with startups. We do a lot of other stuff now as well, brokerage, because that kind of opened the door for us for commercial finance brokerage. We work with most of the lenders in the UK, mainly kind of servicing small businesses, so up to 7-figure turnover. But yeah, that's kind of the story, really. It's a strange one. Lots of.
So it's like, do you ever remember looking through any of the business plans and seeing, is there any ones that you remember, any ones that really stood out? You thought, wow, that's a shocker, or it was really good.
There've been some interesting ones. So we've done some quite well known businesses, to be fair, that actually I won't say who they are because I don't know if they already mentioned or not, but some of the businesses that we've actually funded over the years are actually, wouldn't go as far as saying they're like big brand household names, but you would probably know them. You would have heard of them. You see they're in supermarkets or whatever, yeah. Or you would have seen them advertised like clothing brands. You would have seen them advertised on Twitter or Instagram or TikTok or whatever. But then, some of them are terrible. But the ones that are terrible, they just get declined. They don't, because at the end of the day, it's not in anyone's interest to give someone, money for something that they're gonna, it's difficult because you're kind of crushing their dreams a bit. But at the same time, the last thing they want is to be saddled with a 10 or 20 grand loan for something that's going to eat all their money and leave them, not unable to repay a loan. So, I
remember seeing one years ago, and it's the Prince's Trust here that does the start, the young sort of business loans. And a guy had brought me a business plan, and he says, "Look, can you take a look at it?" And it was at the time that if you said the word cannabis, it was considered illegal. And his whole business plan was to open up this shop that was selling like bongs and grinders and all sorts of cannabis, affiliated merchandise. Paraphernalia. And I thought, I don't know how you present this, that this would be considered for a loan.
Yeah.
And to my amazement, not only did he get the Prince's Trust loan, it was a raging success.
Oh, there you go.
And I remember seeing him years later. I said, how did things go? Went from strength to strength, and it was just one of these lucky sort of situations. I think the stigma around cannabis had sort of changed, and this was sort of becoming a bit more mainstream. But at the time, I thought the barrier to entry is going to be that they don't want to affiliate business lending to something that's maybe not seen as a product that they would like to put their name to. But it worked.
Yeah. There you go.
But it even took me by surprise. I thought, well, fair enough, and good on them.
Yeah, well, exactly that. Yeah, they obviously knew their market.
Did you have anything like that caught you where you thought, like, this isn't going to work because of what they were involved in?
There was, I don't know. There's a few strange ones. I've got to be a bit careful about naming and shaming people. But
you can just say there was something like this. You don't need to name them.
So if you want to go full off the deep end wacky, we did. Some of them were terrible, but some of them were terrible, but like absolutely insane. And there was a guy that wanted to set up his own space program, and he was insistent that he was going to raise £40 million from this investor, but he needed a 10 grand loan to get himself started. And it was absolutely insane. I can't remember the specifics of it, but it was nuts. He was going to build a rocket basically and go into space with this 10 grand startup loan. So yeah, a few things like that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. So
They're entertaining. See these people. I mean,
Yeah.
I've seen a few of these wacky characters at some events, you know, and even though they're fucking bonkers, there's something there's something a bit entertaining about them where you go, how the fuck did you come up with this?
Yeah, exactly.
It's so preposterous that you say, like, how did you, like, where did this spawn from?
Yeah.
Like, you know, you can imagine like Davey in his flat on a Friday, an epiphany comes to him, and he's like, look, I reckon if I can get 10 grand, I can build a rocket. How does it come about?
I don't know. Must be something like that. We're watching too much telly.
Fair play. I mean, well, look at Elon. I mean, Elon's doing it. So
yeah.
Maybe he was on the right path.
Yeah, maybe he is. I mean, Elon spent a bit more than 10 grand, didn't he? But he's got the spirit at least, I suppose.
Did you lend Elon 10 grand to get started?
We did. That would be quite a claim. That would be quite a cool story, wouldn't it? But
that would be quite cool.
Unfortunately not.
So where did it morph to now? Like, what are you doing now? Like, so you were doing these sorts of, it was serendipitous in terms of timing.
Yeah.
You've had this crazy journey from snowboarding to now you're the gatekeeper to push loans to help these young sort of entrepreneurs get started.
Yeah.
You now get in the world of lending. What happens next?
So obviously, we got a fair amount of experience with we were able to hire some staff and kind of get some decent experience in lending, commercial lending. We hired some ex-bank guys and people that knew what they were doing. So we were able to kind of start looking at how we worked with how we could work with other lenders. So obviously, we got when the FCA started up, we got our FCA regulation, which allowed us then to kind of go out to the market and start speaking with other lenders. So now we kind of fast forward today, we have between 70 and 100. So there are a lot of lenders out there that no one's ever heard of. Loads of small kind of unknown lenders that kind of work in the background. We've got about somewhere between 70 and 100. Fluctuates all the time, depending on who we kind of cross off the list and who we kind of add on an ongoing basis. Different lenders, that includes kind of the main banks. So we don't really do that much with kind of the big name, kind of peer-to-peer lenders. And then lots of different small, regional, localized lenders that we work with as well. And the idea is that people come to us they're a bit, because the done thing, I suppose, historically is you need a business loan. You don't know much about the financial markets and all that kind of stuff. You just go to your bank, don't you? Say, can I have a business loan? The bank says, no. You're not making enough money and whatever, blah, blah, blah. So in most cases, the banks aren't really interested in doing you a loan unless you're much more established. You've got very, very good credit and it's kind of like a no risk for them. But there are lots of other lenders out there that have a lot of appetite to do SME lending. So there's a whole kind of market out there. So our job is really to look at the business that comes to us. We say, well, what boxes do you tick? And we can kind of look at their specific kind of risk. And we know, obviously, through our experience and who we have on our books, we know whose risk appetite they're going to fall within. So we'll say, right, this is who we think you'll work with. We'll put together a case for you. Then we go to the lender, and then we try and get the money effectively.
So you're sort of helping filter out you're helping to smooth the process of trying to find the lender to
exactly that. So we're basically we're a middleman effectively. So I mean, it's smoothing the process, but it's also the fact that there's another two elements really. One, a lot of these lenders don't work direct with people; they only work through brokers. And two, that there's just there's so much choice out there. A lot of the time, these guys don't necessarily display what their specific risk appetite is. And the problem is, if you go out and you apply to lots and lots of different places for a loan, and when you don't know who is suitable for you, you end up getting a string of declines on your credit report, and then it makes you much less likely to be able to get a loan from people who maybe would have given you a loan in the first place. So we're kind of acting as kind of almost like a guide into like, well, who actually do you have realistic prospects of getting a business loan from as well.
It's that inside knowledge that helps because you know the landscape, and rather than right, look, go and chap every door. People don't maybe necessarily understand this when you're saying there's a mark goes on your credit file. If you go to the wrong lenders and they do a credit check, it looks, the more that you add in a short period of time, looks as if you're desperate. So that then puts off other lenders. So if you go to the first batch of lenders who are never ever going to look at this and it isn't in their wheelhouse, then you're just going to rack up all these checks that you, on a loan that you would have never got from them in the first place, and it will put you off the people that possibly would have considered you.
That's exactly right, yeah. And that's kind of what we try to stop people doing. Yeah.
So what, in terms of, you know, the business side of things, where did you kick off in terms of you? Like what happened? Did you ever go back to the snowboarding? Did you ever purchase another rally car? Like what do you get up to outside Biz Britain?
Yeah, I haven't got any more rally cars, but I've got a bit more of a boring German SUV now. But
the accountants that are watching are fucking applauding you. So safe. Write it off as a tax
well, it does
expense.
It does the job. I can fit my dogs in the back and put all our luggage in when we go like away places, and put my snowboard in the back. I still do go snowboarding. I can't go to the dry slope that I used to go to when I was a kid anymore, because that's been knocked down, houses put on it now, which is a shame. But there's a dry slope, sorry, not a dry slope, a snow dome in Hemel Hempstead that sometimes we go to. But then I'll try and do a trip. I mean, we haven't been for the last couple of years, but historically we try to go every year for at least a week in the winter. Yeah, so I've kind of always kept it up. You know, taught my stepson now, he comes away with us when we go as well. So he's pretty good. He's pretty better now than I was when I was in my teens, because we got him started when he was 7. So wow. Yeah, he's 14 now, so he's got a bit of experience.
Has he got any grand aspirations of competing in the Winter X Games?
I don't know. He's probably got his head a bit more screwed on than I did with all that stuff. Yeah, maybe though. Who knows? How
quick was it? Remember, but taking you back to the time when you were in the crappy flat, like living next. I seem to remember it being under a railway bridge. Have I made that up?
So it was basically it was a terrace house, like one of the railway cottages that back on. So you know when you go on the train into London or whatever, you see like all the houses that literally like look, you can like just wave to people in the windows. It was like one of those basically. It was right near the mainline train station, so it was quite convenient to get to London. But it was in a pretty grim area, and there's lots of crime and lots of like human feces in the streets. And I remember one time in the morning I was getting ready.
Human feces.
Yeah. Well, you get the heroin addicts and stuff hanging around in the kind of underpass at the train station. Obviously, they'd go and find somewhere to take a dump. And it was.
But how do you know it's a human?
You can just tell by looking at it and smell the smell of it.
That's when you know. Yeah. That's when you're now up to speed on the difference between, was that a dog?
Yeah,
or is that the junkie that's came down here? And you know
exactly.
That's when you know it's time to move.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it served its purpose for a couple of years, but I wouldn't want to go back there. But I remember a great example. I think it was about 8 o'clock in the morning. I was getting ready to go out, and there was some commotion out the window, and some poor young guy, must have been like early 20s, like I was obviously walking to the train station. Some guy that was absolutely off his face on some kind of drugs was just walking around the streets just screaming at everyone. He basically picked on this guy, was trying to rob him at knife point. And I remember trying to have an argument with this guy out the window, like saying, like, leave him alone. And I had the phone to the police in one hand and arguing with this guy on the other, out the window while I was talking to the police. And it's kind of just funny. You got to kind of get used to that kind of stuff as normal when you're living in an area like that. But then now looking back, it just seems nuts. But that was kind of like the environment I was living in when I was trying to get it all started. So you kind of have to be prepared, I guess, to kind of eat shit, as it were, for a while to kind of give yourself the.
So how long were you there?
About 3 years or so. Maybe.
And were you single? Or you...
No, I was have a girlfriend there and have a son. Yeah.
Imagine the grief.
Yeah. Yeah, but it did the job. And now we're obviously somewhere much nicer. So.
It's good character building, though.
Yeah, definitely. What teach you about life.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing is that see if you can go into situations where you can have a conversation with people that are in that type of area. Like it just opens up so many, it breaks away boundaries, because you have these social sort of stigmas that people are held by. And when you've experienced lots of different places, you just don't have those barriers.
That's very true. Yeah, that's something I've always been quite good at, is being able to, pride myself on almost, and be able to speak to anyone and kind of have a conversation and associate with anyone really, from whether they're street sweeper to CEO of a blue chip company. I can I can hold myself the same in a conversation. Some people, they're kind of almost like classist, aren't they? They like only speak to people of their own kind of demographic, and they're always, whether it's scared or whatever, reverse snobbery, I don't know. They won't speak to people outside their kind of demographic. But I've never really been like that.
Mm-hmm. What would you say to people that are like that?
What would I say? What
advice would you give them in terms of
that? It's I think a lot of it comes down to people just struggle to relate to people. I think it's specifically like, I think when you get people that are starting out, who haven't got much experience and haven't got any connections, they kind of put people who have done well, or maybe in really senior positions in jobs or whatever, they put them on a pedestal, don't they? And I think they find it hard to relate to them, and they almost see them as in some way superior. But the way I've always seen it is that people are just people at the end of the day, and we're all just doing different stuff during the day. We're all the same. We're just we're talking to different people in the day. We're doing different work during the day, but just people. And just because they've got a better job, or they're a few years ahead in terms of what they've achieved, doesn't make them any it doesn't make them scary or some kind of like alien that you can't have a conversation with. I just treat everyone the same. I talk to them like I'm talking to you now, and that's the way I see it. I think that's the way you've got to approach it, and that's what I would say to anyone, is that just treat people like they're people, talk to them like a normal person, respect them like you would a normal person. It goes both ways as well. It goes, I think there's a danger as well when people start to do well. Some people get full of their own kind of hot air, don't they? And they see themselves as kind of being too good to speak to certain people or associate with certain people. They put themselves on a pedestal. I think that's just as harmful. Yeah,
big time. What about, it seems, I think you've maybe picked this up from your time watching the X Games, but you have a nonchalant approach to sort of everything, looking after them appear quite easy. So what was it like in terms of, you must have a more disciplined or tough mindset, or a goal that you wanted to work towards? Or did you?
Yeah.
Was it clear?
Yeah.
Did you have a clear vision what you wanted?
I always just wanted to be successful, I suppose. I wanted to have a business that I felt was, a successful business that was making lots of money and gave me the kind of life that I wanted to be able to live, really, financially, in terms of my free time, and all that kind of thing. That was kind of the vision, really. And I kind of always just, I don't know why, I just, you have ups and downs, don't you? But I always just kind of had this belief that it would happen. I just needed to keep going, and like eventually it would get there. It's like this. I think that's the thing that, if there's one takeaway I can kind of give to anyone, I suppose, over what I've done for the last sort of like 12 plus years, it's that that's the kind of one thing you need. You need to just have that kind of perseverance and kind of tenacity just to keep going. You're going to have days that are horrible, and I've had loads of times over the last decade where I've like literally felt like there's no way out. Like, this is all going to come. How has this not come tumbling down yet? Something's going to go horribly wrong, and you feel like your back's up against the wall. And then 6 months later, you kind of kept plugging away, and things are better than they've ever been. So I think you just kind of you've got to have that unwavering belief and just keep plugging along and just not give up. To the point where some people think you're nuts.
Well, this is the thing. This is what I was thinking here. If you've got someone out there that is maybe doesn't have that belief. The question you would normally ask is, how do you get that? How do you pick that belief up? How do you learn to have that?
Yeah, that's an interesting one, isn't it? It kind of comes back to the kind of entrepreneur born or made kind of thing, doesn't it? I don't know. Views either way, but I think there are things you can do to kind of, like exercise you can do and stuff to build your self-confidence, I suppose, aren't there? And there's lots of different, I don't know. It's I think for me, it's hard to say because it's something I always just had. It was just my personality trait. And I think to an extent, I kind of use the analogy of like sports. I think everyone can do exercise and get fit and learn to play a sport and get decent at a sport. Whereas some people will just be born and they can do it. They don't need to try. They're just built for it. They're just physically and mentally. They just have a natural talent. And I think there's an element of that. So that's the thing with running a business, starting a business. I don't think it's not difficult. It's quite simple to do, but I think it's more. It doesn't require any particular skills. It requires a certain. I think it's more about your personality traits, to be honest. In my experience, is having that unwavering self-belief and that like refusal to give up. Can you? Yeah, I mean, people can practice it and add it, but I think there are always going to be people out there who just have it, and it's their natural personality, and they're going to find it easier. But can people learn it? Yeah, I think people definitely can. I've found, over the years, I really enjoy reading personal development books and podcasts and listening to other people's stories and stuff, because it kind of like it kind of infuses you with that kind of this can be done. Like other people have done it, they've done it. This is and knowing how other people have done it, I think is quite helpful, because it kind of gives some kind of reassurance that well, if other people have done it, why can't I?
It's interesting that you see it that way. Do you think that you're born with it?
I think there's a mix. So I think I don't know which has more influence, whether it's nature or nurture. I think there's possibly an equal split, but I think there are some people who are going to be born with personalities that make them find it easier to do it than people that don't necessarily have that kind of natural personality where they want to do it. Because some people just don't have the. I think if you've got the motivation, you're questioning, well, how do I do this, and you want to do it, and you're interested to the point where you're looking at how to increase your self-confidence, then you probably do have somewhere in you that personality trait. Because I know lots of people. I speak to people all the time in all sorts of walks of life, and they hate the job or whatever. I say, well, why don't you start a business or try this or that? Oh no, I couldn't do that. No, I don't have the motivation or whatever. And those types of people. That's what I'm saying. Some people will just never do it. It doesn't matter, what you say to them or what the opportunity is. They just don't have it in them. They just want the security of going to work, working 9 to 5, and then coming home at the end of the month and having money put in their bank. They don't want the risk, or it just doesn't appeal to them. I think you have to have a certain type of personality for that lifestyle to appeal to you, if that makes sense. But I think I
have a slightly different thought on it.
Yeah.
I think that we're born with it. I think we're born with belief.
Yeah.
And then our environment or people around us try to dismantle it, not willingly or not knowingly.
Yeah.
And some of us just are so resilient to it that we don't buy the story.
Yeah.
Like I didn't buy the story of people like us don't get that. I'm afraid I don't, that doesn't work for me.
Yeah. I was the same. Yeah.
If he can do it over there, and I've looked at him and he's got 2 arms and 2 legs, and
exactly.
There's no reason why I can't, unless you can explain to me why there's a difference. I don't believe you.
Yeah.
But if you look at, you know what I mean? I think what happens is when we're born with everything in front of us, with all the opportunities that we could possibly want.
Yeah.
But we buy into someone else's idea of you can't do it.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? And that's what stops most people, in my experience. It's not their ability or whatever. People get it crushed out of them when they're kids or when they're young adults, and they get this, they just get told time and time again, oh, but you can't do that. You need to do this. You need to conform. You need to have a sensible job, and you need to, do this, that, and the other. And it breaks people's spirits over time, doesn't it? But then it's the same way as the people like we were talking about earlier, who don't buy into kind of rules with no reason. I guess it's the same kind of personality trait, isn't it? We don't buy into being told we can't do something. Yeah, when we know we can.
Well, think about it. I mean, like, look at the cop-out opportunities that you've had, right? So the shock from your school going from one environment to the other was huge. It was the rate of change, the delta was massive. So from really relaxed to really sort of draconian. Then you've been hit by a car. Imagine what you could throw at this. Your PTSD, your trauma. I got ADHD from it, and so on. Like you can attach anything that's popular in culture today.
Yeah.
So there's another cop out. You didn't want to be at school, so you went to work. You didn't have the uni degree. You could have copped out there. You stayed in this really, really rough place. You could have copped out there. You're on the phone to the police while somebody's trying to rob a guy going to his work. You can tell the difference between human and animal excrement. And it's like, look at all the cop-out opportunities where you could have blamed any of those to the point where, I had to sell my car because I needed to go from a car that I bought and I loved, take a loss, to buying essentially a beat-up car that it probably won't pass its next MOT because I'll do what it takes. There's all those corporate opportunities. Why did you not buy into? Why does everyone else buy into them? You didn't.
Well, as you say, I think that's what I was trying to say. Really, some people are just born with a personality that prevents them from doing that. For me, it was just, I don't know. It's like if people say you can't do it or it's not going to work, it's like speaking a different language. It's just, no, it is going to work. I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to do it, and eventually it will be different. And I think I think that is the part you're born with. That's very hard to replicate if you don't have it. I think people can try to, and they can try and fake it, but I think that is just, it's part of you, isn't it?
Yep. Well, this is the thing. I think we're all born with it. I mean, I look at, I do a lot of work with what's the relationship between self-confidence, self-belief, self-value. I think they're intertwined. I don't think they're all the same, but I think there's a relationship between them. And I think you start off with a certain level, and that level will vary from person to person, but you have you have a bar that you start with. Dependent on how much you allow yourself to be influenced from others around you, will either reduce that bar or keep it the same place. What you do in terms of the decisions you make can increase that bar. So, the more resilient you become, you can add to that power that you have. And if you are influenced by people to taking the comfort or the weaker option, you can reduce that bar. And that's what we see when we speak to people, and you'll look at them, you'll see firsthand, you've got the potential to do this. You'll see it in them, and they just won't do it.
Yeah. It's a shame, isn't it? It's part of interesting what we do as well. Trying to recognise that in people. It's that kind of spark, isn't it?
You can see it, and it's interesting when you try to I look at their mind a bit like when you pick up a pair of boots and it's all knotted. And you go, it's a great pair of boots, and if you just undid these knots, it'd be really good.
Yeah.
It'd be really, really good. But you don't need to undo all the knots. Just start with one. And then once you get what about taking out the next one and the next one? Then before you know it, you've got this, you're back to this perfect set of boots.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Yeah, I always approach life in that in general, really, and anything I've got to achieve. I think some people get put off, don't they? Because they look at some task and think, oh, it's mammoth, how am I going to do that? But I just look at one thing at a time. I could chunk it up into little bite-sized pieces, and I just keep doing it and doing it. I don't really think, you kind of keep the end goal in mind, but you don't focus too much on it. You just focus on achieving that one important thing that you need to do to get you to the next stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the key to it. I mean, it's the old how do you eat an elephant sort of analogy.
Yeah.
You can't eat it in one go. You need to do it bit by bit.
Yeah.
But people look at the elephant and go, I'll never be able to eat that. So, well, try taking a bite at a time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What would you say to people in this day and age in terms of, you had great success in terms of getting a bit of drumming up a bit of business and a bit of notoriety using LinkedIn and Twitter. Obviously things have changed dramatically since then. What would you be doing now? What would you suggest to people out there that are interested in getting involved in this world and want to generate a little bit of a following or a hype?
I think social media is a funny one, because as you say, social media was nothing like it is today when I started, and I've made the mistake that I would tell people not to make now, to be honest. When I first started, and that there's a natural tendency to be worried about what you're saying, and if you're going to upset someone, and you want to kind of look professional. A lot of people that are new to it, they put on this very kind of corporate, very sensible, very vanilla, bland kind of posts, just to try and post something, create some content. And the problem is when you do that, no one's interested in what you have to say because it's boring, and it kind of blends into the background. I think particularly now more than ever, to rise above the kind of all the noise and kind of cut through and to actually make an impact, you have to be saying something. Not it doesn't have to be everything you say, but you have to be saying something that's divisive and it gets people arguing. There's no better way of building a social media presence and getting heard than taking a side on a divisive argument about something, because it works twofolds. One, it plays the algorithms of social media, because that's what it wants. It wants people commenting and engaging with the post. And if you post something that's divisive that people have very strong emotional opinions on, they're going to start replying to it, whether it's negative or positive or whatever. You have to have a thick skin to do that. Yes, you absolutely do. Because you have to be able to be prepared to be bombarded with people sending you like abuse and all sorts of stuff. But once you get over that, it's actually surprisingly easy to build up quite a big presence online. You just need to be able to take, the trolls and just keep posting about stuff that you believe in, that's divisive, that other people believe in. Because what then happens is that it does the work, that effectively the platforms do the work for you, that the content gets pushed out to more and more people comment. Those people start arguing with each other in the comments about it. That creates more comments, and it snowballs that way. Mm-hmm. So what have you said
that's divisive?
Well, I mean, I kind of learnt this lesson in 2020, really. Before then, I would post quite kind of just, plain business type stuff and quotes and stuff like that. And I got built up a decent following. But it really took off when obviously I started talking about my opinions on the impacts of like the government restrictions and lockdown stuff on businesses, and how I took a really strong stance against that. And whereas at the time most people were completely the opposite, but obviously I found the kind of tribe of people that were like me, like you, that were kind of vehemently opposed to what was going on, and were prepared to kind of fight to the dying breath about what our views on it were. And that kind of really helped, to be honest, in terms of building up a following. Because I think when you find something that you genuinely believe in, that's very emotive and other people genuinely believe in it, and you talk about it in a way that gets people talking and arguing, I think it's inevitable really that you're going to build a following.
Mm-hmm. What was the sort of change? Like what was the change? What was the difference between,
for me?
Yeah.
I got to a point where I just couldn't hold in my opinions anymore. I had to vent. So I started venting on Twitter, not really thinking much about it before I knew it. It was just gone crazy. Yeah. And my posts, my tweets were getting tens of thousands of likes and retweets and stuff like that.
What was the sort of things that you were putting on? Were you like sort of making a case, or were you just literally venting, or how would you do it?
Really. I'd have like different types of things I post. I put just opinions on things that are happening in current events and my take on it, and I put venting, like this is outrageous, blah 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 blah. Whatever. It was stuff like that. Stuff that was emotive, but I don't think you can do it. I don't think you can be fake with it. I think you have to be quite genuine and off the cuff, and because I think people can see through it if you don't actually believe what you're saying. I think it's a lot more common now. I think people call it like outrage content, don't they? It's a lot more people try to do it now because I think people have learned that you can do it, and it does snowball very quickly in terms of engagement. But I mean, to be honest, I've almost gone the other way now. I've kind of stepped back from that. I think the problem is when you spend all your time writing content that's it's negative but angry and comes from that kind of place, I just find that you have to be a bit careful because it can start to take a toll on you after a while. And
in terms of like your own personal energy, in terms of how you feel.
It does, yeah. I found that, and I actually took a break away from sort of social media for a while, and it really kind of made me think, well, hang on, I need to kind of cheer up a bit here. So now I try to focus mainly on the positive stuff.
What did you feel? What did you feel that you needed a break for?
It just, inevitably, I think it's a hard one to explain, but when you've got a kind of a moderate or large, whatever, following, you get a lot of engagement on social media. There's two elements, I think. You've got the kind of almost like addiction to like the kind of dopamine it gives you when you've got all these people like, engaging with the stuff and saying, yeah, this is great. Oh yeah, whatever. And you've also got the negative side of being just hounded by people that like they hate you to the point where they become obsessed with you. And they used to get people like that would message me find me on different social media platforms and send me like aggressive messages. And look, one guy made literally made a blog post, like this massive, I think it's about, I don't know how many words. It was like a book, honestly, online about how we were kind of, me and a selection of other people who were kind of had similar views, were like basically some sort of like second coming of like the Antichrist or something, and like we were like in the Freemasons, and we were like had all this like some guy got a picture of me from 2017. I think I was sat just like my hands like that. He's saying he's doing some sort of like satanic like hand signal. I was like, what? It's just a picture of me sat on a step. Yeah. So you get people that are just that you had to deal with all that. And after a while, it does start to grind you down a bit when you're just dealing with day in and day out.
What does grinding down feel like?
just exhausting, and you just kind of feel like, do I really want to do this anymore? And you get that kind of almost like anxiety every time you open your notifications. You've got 100 of these like messages, and like 50 of them are going to be like nice messages, 50 of them are going to be like, I want you to like go and fall off a cliff or something like that. And it's just,
were they that bad, or was it just people trolling? Or
some people get very aggressive and threatening, whatever. But it's probably a minority that are like really, really nasty. But a lot of people are just trolling and being just generally like.
You should try that shit up here. I mean, they should try. They should really should
try it on you, George. Yeah.
I mean, like good luck to you. I mean, if you think like I go to the gym and train with two guys, and there's just no there's no limit. I mean, like you'd need to go some before you'd even ruffle my feathers. Like, this is a sort of level of like banter. What would you call banter? People would be outraged at.
Yeah,
and it's that tough skin, and just that sort of, hey, look, get on with it. Like, it's a comment.
That's it.
What does it really matter? But it's interesting. I mean, I obviously doing it, if you've got literally tens of thousands of them, it's going to take an impact at some point.
It does, yeah. When it's at the first, like you kind of like laugh, joke. It's even. I wouldn't say it like gets to you like on an individual basis as such, but I think when you like spent a couple of years or whatever, just having it every day and just at high volume, and it's like your phone's constantly going off, and it never stops, and you pull the refresh on your feed, and you've got like 50 more like engagements that you've got to go through, and it's just that does get a bit exhausting, to be honest.
I mean, noticing a change was it a change in your own sort of like feeling towards it as well? We were sort of resenting this sort of negative energy that was coming in.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of that, and a bit of like, I kind of feel like my main, emotive stance on all of everything that was happening at the time was very much around the impact on businesses and how what was being doing to our kind of freedoms and that kind of stuff. But I feel like after the lockdowns and everything ended and everything started to go back to normal, I felt there's less I guess pressure on me wanting to do that kind of stuff, because we've fought the battle for the last couple of years, and now we've kind of got where we wanted to be. We can go back and we can kind of have a normal life again to an extent. So there's obviously
any of the trolls that had done all the work came back and says, look, we've updated and we've retracted all our second coming of Antichrist. Where are they?
No.
Sorry, Matt, you were right. Everything you said was true and correct. Looking back now,
unfortunately,
I apologise. I was probably misted by my double mask sitting in the car myself. I think the fourth booster had taken an effect on me, and I didn't feel right when I wrote that tweet.
Addled my brain. I think unfortunately none of that. It's kind of just people just fade away a bit. I've tried to keep my posts more about kind of like positive spins on things and motivation and business and stuff now, which is what like core account was always about. So that kind of stuff's always inevitably going to generate less engagement than political posts, but I feel in a happier place. I do still post some political stuff, of course, but not all day every day like I used to.
Is it just not as tasty as it used to be?
It is. I think the problem is, and this is what happens to a lot, and I've seen it happen with a lot of other big accounts who were very prevalent during that time. It's like an addiction, and you start off like fighting for something that you really believe in, and you build up, like I did, you build up a lot of notoriety, and people start to take notice and know who you are, and you get invited to go on like TV interviews and stuff like that. And then suddenly that is kind of over in terms of like the political sphere and the current events and the news. It's not being talked about all the time anymore, and it leaves a massive void. Like, well, what do I do now? And what I've seen happening with a lot of other people were in similar kind of situations. They just jump onto the next really highly emotive current events thing, whether it's like wars or whatever, and then I'll double down on that to try and replace. Do you know what I mean?
Trying to fill the void,
become like a commentator on that, and I just don't really have any interest in being in that cycle. I said what I had to say because I believed it, and it was something that was very important to me.
Do you think they're trying to fill the void? They don't necessarily have the conviction or belief in what it is.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's that. And I think sometimes they genuinely do convince themselves. They do have a conviction and belief about it because they need something to focus on. But for me, that's just not what I'm interested in. Social media and that kind of stuff is secondary to running my business. Whereas I guess for a lot of people, social media is their main focus in life, isn't it? Influencers and whatever. I was kind of like almost like an accidental influencer in that respect. I kind of just it came as a byproduct of me just ranting about stuff. My business is kind of where my focus is really.
Did you have anyone commenting that your sort of line of business was involving the government to some degree?
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I mean, by that time, it was very much detached from the government in the sense that it's all administered by the British Business Bank now, which a lot of their funding is private, comes from private equity. Some of it comes from the government. It is government owned, but I mean, it's not. It's not. I don't think see it as being something that's a problem. Personally, you get some people going, but you're doing stuff with the government. They try and pick holes in what you're doing, but at the end of the day, whether it's government or not, it's an ongoing initiative that's been around since 2012. I think it's very positive for businesses. I think you kind of got to give credit where credit's due. Something that is good. I'm not going to sniff at it just because it was started by the government. It's a good scheme that helps thousands and thousands of people to start businesses. So
good. So how do people get in touch with you, Matt? If they're out there thinking Matt's my guy.
Yeah. I think, Matt, so my name's Matt Gubba, MATT Gubba, Gubba. My username on pretty much every social network is @Matt Gubba. So whether it's Twitter or X, or whatever, Instagram, everywhere really. If you just stick Matt Gubba into Google, I come up as a first result. So pretty easy to get in contact with me if you just type my name into a search engine. Yeah.
Well, great. It's been a pleasure having you on today to have a chat about how you went from the train the railway bridge to Biz Britain. A rather cool story, and sharing your philosophies and that resilience and how self-belief is really important. I think it's a extremely powerful tool. You've demonstrated it in spades, and why we should probably go and find some more of that. And it can be found, because even though some people might have taken that away from your bar, you can certainly do things that can add to it. And I think that that's no bad thing. And you're a living, breathing, walking example of why people should. So thanks for taking the time to spare an hour and a half out of your day to have a chat with me and share some of that wisdom that's got you here today.
Thanks. No, it's an absolute pleasure, George. I've enjoyed being on, and it's great to speak to you. It's been fun.
So we hope you enjoyed this week's episode of Conversations with an Investor. Matt has told the twists and tales of his life, going from having to sell his beloved Subaru all the way through to being on the phone to the police whilst convincing a junkie not to rob a poor guy on his way to work, and why his timing was perfect in terms of the world of social media, what you can do if you want to build a social media profile, and some of the things to stay away from, and some of the pitfalls that you might not be aware of if you do go down that path. You'll find all Matt's information in the show notes. So give him a follow. Go keep abreast of his notifications. I've certainly thoroughly enjoyed speaking with him today and following his posts, because the content's great and most of all, it's real. So from us this week, Conversations with an Investor, that's a wrap.